to do it? Or can we afford not to?
Albie Amankona, Conservative political commentator, has been watching that report with us, and it's a big worry for so many people. Our own bills, governmental bills, economic growth. But let's start with Prime Minister's questions yesterday. So this is only the second day in the job for Liz Truss as the new Prime Minister. How do you think she's been doing so far?
So, as you rightly say, Eamonn, second day in the job and straight into Prime Minister's questions with Keir Starmer. I think what we saw yesterday was a very different style of Prime Minister's questions compared to what we saw with Boris Johnson versus Keir Starmer. There weren't really any of the sort of childish jokes that Boris Johnson used to be so famous for. It wasn't as fun. Liz Truss sort of came across more like the chairman or chairwoman of the board of a FTSE 100 company rather than a joker at an Oxford or a Cambridge society, which I thought was refreshing.
Yeah, and interesting to see former Prime Minister Theresa May on her feet, not this time criticising the current Prime Minister, which she did so many times during Boris Johnson's tenure, but there really giving her a goal to shoot, which she took advantage of.
Absolutely, and I think one of the really interesting things about that exchange in particular was that in Liz Truss's response, she said she was looking forward to getting advice from the former Prime Minister, which I understand is not something which Boris Johnson was too keen on getting advice from either.
So a relationship seems to already have been formed there and no threat implied from it.
No, not at all. But I mean, look, these are two female leaders of the Conservative Party who are both alive and both in the House at the same time. And that is quite a powerful thing. I think one of the last things Theresa May said as Prime Minister was the second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I'm not sure she felt that in just one Prime Minister's time there would be another female Tory Prime Minister at number 10.
And yet here we are, and today a huge announcement expected. Big spending from Liz Truss, very punchy move. But I suppose in many ways the long protracted job interviews she described it as, where everyone was feverishly saying we need action now, has meant actually as soon as she's in the job she's able to provide this bounce, this response that people have been waiting for some time. Yeah,
absolutely. I think one of the things that is an advantage from being seen as a winner from, really the beginning of the final round of voting to the membership is that you can probably be quite sure you're going to win, so you can actually start making a lot of these big plans in government. And of course, we had Nadhim Zahawi, the former Chancellor, also working on options for the new administration when they came in, so they could really hit the ground, not just running, but sprinting. Right. And so we're expecting to hear about this energy package today. Earlier on this week, I think it was mooted at 100 billion. Now we're hearing 150 billion. Sounds like a very expensive plan. And the question from Labour yesterday at Prime Minister's questions was, how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah, well, and scary.
Just on that, interesting to see on the front of the Eye this morning, former Chancellor, Conservative Chancellor, we should mention, Philip Hammond, saying he thinks that a future tax rise is inevitable if you're going to borrow to the extent that we're seeing, that we will all end up paying for it at some point. What do you think of that?
Well, someone's got to pay for it, Isabel, and there are only a number of ways that you
Why not the energy companies? That's what I say.
Well, that is the argument that Keir Starmer was making yesterday in Prime Minister's questions. There's a couple of things about that point. First of all, a windfall tax would not raise £150 million. So there would still need to be some borrowing involved. OK, yes, less borrowing, but there would still need to be some borrowing involved. And I don't think Keir Starmer was particularly honest about that. The argument from the Conservatives would be, well, if we are going to be putting these unpredictable taxes on companies like windfall taxes, will that dissuade investment, especially in oil and gas companies that we need to invest in our supply to increase that supply and bring down prices?
Albie, just hold on there and keep those thoughts going. We just want to add to what you're saying with a GB News viewer and listener, and that is Mike Moore. We say good morning to Mike, and he's in Devon.
Hello, Mike.
Watching us this morning. Hiya, Mike.
Hi, Isabel. Hi, Eamonn.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Well, day two. What, Liz Truss, what do you think?
Well, like Nigel says, I'll believe it when I see it, but it's... at least there's a difference between the Labour Party and the Conservatives now. Well, at least it looked like that in the Prime Minister's question times.
OK, so you are sceptical about whether or not she'll actually be what she's saying she'll be, are you?
Well, yeah, I'm 67 now. I've seen quite a few things, and promises, and there's usually a lot of U-turns, isn't it, as they go through. Well, that's understandable, I suppose. But these are funny times, and I've been connected a lot through my work with energy supplies, only in residential settings. So it's I've got a liking. I've got a bias towards this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, just to explain there, Mike was a retirement manager in residential homes, so obviously that cost is a big thing. I'm admiring your living room there as you sit there bathed in light. There's light all around you. Is it going to be a worry for you, Mike?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's early days yet, isn't it? It's not. It's October. I'll see it. But one of my concerns, Eamonn, is the in residential care settings. There's about 770,000 units in the UK of some different sort of styles of independent living or care or nursing, and if a lot of them rely on electric style heating for safety reasons and things like that. But and they're managed by management companies, and if the prices go up sky high like that, they have to recoup their cost. Now, the only way they can recoup their cost is in the service charge, or ultimately in a surcharge, which is an absolute disaster for residents. I just don't see it. There's issues of bed blocking as well. So if you've got care homes shutting down because of extortionate heating cost or energy cost, where are they going to go?
Downward spiral, Mike. Downward spiral. Another interesting take on the energy crisis
absolutely.
there. Retirement homes, residential homes, like that. Mike, really appreciate your time this morning. Mike Moore speaking to us live from Devon, where we can see Mike, it's getting darker in the mornings. It's getting darker at night. Winter's encroaching.
Yeah,
as they say. Good stuff.
Mike switched his light out as well. Look at that. He's saving money already.
We're all going to have to be doing that.
Can't wait to get rid of us. Mike, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. So, Albie, it's interesting just when you think about who's affected by all of this, and we talk in terms of domestic bills. I mean, he's talking about care homes and residential homes, retirement homes, and everybody pays. At the end of the day, there's no escape from this, whether you're in business or whether you're just, tiding along in your own home.
Indeed. I mean, a lot of the conversation has been about the energy bills for families and the price cap which exists there. Of course, there is not a price cap for businesses or even public sector institutions like schools. So, Mike is absolutely right. What do these organisations do when their costs go up? Do they cut costs in other areas? Do they increase costs in other areas to sort of balance the books, if you will? What does that mean for people in care homes? What does that mean for children in school?
Well, I mean, we were just talking at the top of the programme. My little one had her first day in primary school yesterday. The head teacher addressed all the parents that gathered afterwards, and she said, I have never known funding for schools and the year ahead like I do now. And she said, let me tell you, teachers are now making donations to the school in order to keep it at the level at which they've become accustomed. And they were just begging us to set up direct debits, doing whatever we could to try and support the school just to keep it afloat. And she said, don't listen to anything anyone tells you. It's never been this bad.
Yeah.
And these are things that the new government will have to address. And we've not really heard very much about education at all throughout the leadership contest. And I think it is something that needs more focus from the government.
Interesting.